brilliant EP that you guys have brought out.
Oh, thank you.
So going into that, it's such a thought-provoking EP. Tell us a little bit about what kind of things were inspiring you when you sat down to work on the lyrics for this album, because they are so thought-provoking.
Oh, thank you. I think just a lot of introspection. I think I turned 32 in 2020, and it was a really kind of strange year, full of a lot of free time. And that's not even something that I think most touring musicians are accustomed to. So there was a lot of time for self-reflection and just overall kind of taking stock and inventory of how you feel, where you're at in the here and now, and just, trying to be honest with that.
Yeah. So how did you go about your songwriting process? Because everything was so different last year. Did you find yourself writing a lot while you were really deep in thought and almost using it like a journal entry?
At times, but that was, I think the actual process, lyric writing process and vocal writing process, wasn't super different than in the past. I think there's definitely times where you do it because it's therapeutic, and it is cathartic, and then there's other times where, it is utilitarian, because at some point, songwriting, as much as it's an art, is also a craft, and part of a craft is you have to do something to completion. So sometimes you have to just make yourself sit down and stuff, But,
Yeah. You mentioned about the difference of living life in 2020 was different to anything that you'd known before. What was that like for you, suddenly not being able to tour and things like that? Because I know the thing that affected me the most was I suddenly had to record my show from home instead of going into a studio, and to me it then felt like my house was my workplace, and that was really unsettling. How did it affect you that suddenly you couldn't do shows or anything like that?
I think at first, probably like most people, there's a really sort of stark negative reaction to disruption in your normal day-to-day. And so I think that initially that's probably the case. I think after a little bit of a perspective adjustment, I think it sort of shifted to understanding that, well, now I have to work on writing more songs. So if anything, that's kind of why I got into doing music in the first place.
Yep.
And so, it sort of gives pause for not only introspection, and you realize oh, cool, I have all this time to work on music, and I never used to. It used to be the primary focus of a touring band's business. It was, the live touring aspect, and not just the business, but the overall just package of what it means to be a band. A lot of times you're on the road, and writing becomes secondary to touring. And it was, so I'd say at first it was negative, but then, a little paradigm shift, and you can find the positive in it.
Yeah. Did your creativity flow during that time? Because I know it changed for so many people. I know that I know a few screenwriters and musicians that struggled during that time because they weren't out in the world, so they didn't feel that creative energy. But then other people I've spoken to have written enough music for 4 albums. So what was that creativity like for you during that lockdown period?
I think it comes in waves. Sometimes I think creative ideas, I think for most creative people, sometimes it seems like they're just flowing, and then other times it seems like, oh man, maybe I've tapped my entire creative potential and there's just nothing left in there. But yeah, I think, on those days you just kind of sit down and write, or you kind of sit down and reevaluate. But I think there's so much happening in the world that if you're even remotely connected to society around you, or even just a small handful of people around you, I think there was a lot going on. So I think in terms of the traditional sense like, what kind of story would you tell in a song? Maybe that changed a little bit, but I think overall, there's always so much going on. I think just songwriting in general, you're kind of just observing and reporting.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're observing what's happening in your own life, and sometimes you're observing what's happening in other people's lives, or, the collective consciousness, if you will, but there's always something going on.
Yeah, I know for you, Timeless, the track on the EP was actually came from the black and white movies that you were watching. Tell us a little bit about that rabbit hole that you went down with black and white movies, and what were some of the ones that you'd discovered that you'd never seen before?
It's funny because it's like, I was watching, I don't even remember how I got onto it. I think I was watching, it was something, and it was a clip of Casablanca in it. And I was like, man, I remember loving that movie, but I hadn't really, like, seen it in a while, And so, like, just in kind of watching it, just kind of then thinking about how a movie like that fits into, the greater conversation of, like, art and filmmaking, and how that movie outlives anybody that's in it, and how the actual celluloid that it was probably filmed on was I would have a hard time imagining that, like, the original still exists somewhere, because it's so fragile, and I think, and the word timeless, it means, something that is, like, iconic, something that's timeless, but it also, it means without time.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, that can be reflective of loss or reflective of change. But, so I got down a rabbit hole of just watching, just tons of movies on, like, Turner Classic Movies.
Yeah. So, does that make you also stop and think about your own music? Like, do you think that in 50, 60 years' time, some teenager is going to be going through his father or his grandfather's collection of music and find your music, and you're rediscovered by somebody in 50, 60 years' time? Do you ever think about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, all the time. I think it sort of, to me, it's cool. It's you drop a pebble in the water and you have no idea how far the ripples go, and there is a thread of art that existed for me that inspired me to create something, and something I create might inspire somebody else to create something, and the theory inspires somebody else. I just think it's like, it's some point, I think, and maybe it's age, or I don't know, maybe it's life experience, but I got to a point where it was like, I'm just happy to be a character in the story, because it's a big story and we're all just witnesses in it.
Yeah. We talked a little bit before about writing the album, but how did you guys go about recording with everything that was going on with the pandemic as well? Did you do a lot of recording at home this time around?
Yeah, so we all self-engineered all of our parts. We wrote together over Zoom, and actually for a while we were broadcasting our Zoom calls on our Twitch. So we were actually, like, on Twitch writing these songs on live stream and stuff. So then we all engineered all of our own parts, and then the dudes sent me all of everything, and I would track bass and vocals, and then I mixed and mastered it. So we just did it entirely ourselves at home.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen my bandmates in over a year.
Wow.
It's been a year and a week and a half.
Yeah. And
it's been 53 and a half weeks.
Yeah.
Since I've seen any of my bandmates in person.
Wow. Are they starting to talk about when things might open back up for you there? Because we, here in Melbourne, we had our first live music gigs kick off last Friday night because we're down to 0 community transmission at the moment. So have they started to talk about when things might open back up for you?
Oh, no. We're way too chaotic over here.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody really knows what's going on. It's and it's really unfortunate, but no, there are kind of no real real sorts of concrete discussions about when touring in America is going to open back up. I know that vaccinations are happening right now, and they're currently like vaccinating, I think like the first group of people, which is like people over the age of 75 and frontline workers and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Until everything reopens, I am just going to stay diligent about trying to create new music.
Yeah.
So that's all I've got right now.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, does it make you start thinking about bigger things? Because I know that every single film production company in Hollywood at the moment is relocated to Australia because of the low community COVID rate here. Does it make you guys start thinking about something like that, where you base yourself out of Australia for 12 months or something like that, so that you can get out there for the fans again?
That's actually interesting. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, for us, it's just we're all just kind of hunkered down, and we've been feeling like, we've been prolific enough in our output that we just kind of just out songs that excite us, that we think will excite our fans. So I think we're just gonna keep working on music until it's safe. Until it's safe to resume touring again.
Definitely.
But it would be really hard for us to relocate all of our families and whatnot.
Yeah. So
and expensive.
Yeah. So 2021 for you guys, do you expect that there'll be maybe another EP at least come out or something that you guys have been working on, because you have got so much music kind of stockpiled now?
Oh yeah, this is the first of a trilogy.
Yeah.
At least.
Awesome. So have you got any?
So our plan is we just want to, until touring happens again, we just want to keep dropping a new song every few weeks.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we cannot wait for that. I know we are running out of time very, very quickly. So just before I go, I'd just love to ask, what would you like to say to all your Aussie fans out there before they grab a copy of this EP and sit down and take a listen to it?
That we miss you. That Australia has some of the best audiences in the entire world, I think, that I've personally witnessed. I think live music is something that is super culturally important to Australia,
Yeah.
And I think we miss you guys. It's been too long, and it's a damn shame. But you know what? But once it's safe, we will be back, and it's going to be amazing. And I miss Pie Face.
Definitely. Oh, man, they're all closed at the moment. I went into the city the other day, and restaurants and that in the city are still not opening up at the moment because there's virtually nobody in there. So they're all closed at the moment. So yeah, that's a bit disappointing.
I remember the bunch of the. One of the last times we went, they told us that a bunch of the Pie Face franchises had closed. I was like, no, it's so good.
They did, but they all popped up in service stations, which is kind of really weird. So you go in to get petrol, and then it's like, oh, Pie Face is in here as well. So yeah, it's kind of weird.
But that's even better.
Yeah, but it always
kind of reminded me of gas station food.
Yeah, all the ones in Melbourne are still there, but they're just closed at the moment because of the pandemic. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, mate,
it's been a trying time, but I think humans are resilient. We'll get through it.
Definitely. Well, mate, I'll let you go, but stay safe. You and your family stay safe, and we'll see you back in Australia sometime soon, I guess.
Hey, likewise. Thank you so much. And yeah, once we get ready to drop the next EP, I'll come back and we'll talk some more.
Awesome, mate. Will do. You have a great day.
Stay safe.
See ya. Bye.